In this video, we're going to talk about writing equations. So this is going to be similar to when we were translating verbal expressions, except that now instead of expressions, we're going to have equations. All right, like usual, we're going to skip this first little section. We're going to go straight on to the actual lesson where we look at the active vocabulary. And we're going to do some reviewing. So we have some words down here. We actually want to sort them into the different categories. So we have addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division as our categories. So the first word is decreased by. That's a subtraction word. Okay. The next one is increased by. That's addition. Okay. Less than, again, that's subtraction. And remember, less than is special. That's the one where you write it backwards. So if you had 3 less than a number, it would be x minus 3 and not 3 minus x. Product, that's multiplication. Sum is addition. Total is addition, usually. Difference, that is subtraction. There you go. Less, that's also subtraction. But less you don't have to write backwards. So a number less 3 is x minus 3. Less than is the one you do write backwards. That than is the part that makes a difference. More than, that's addition. And again, that would be one that you would write backwards. Quotient, there's our first division word. Twice is multiplication. More specifically, twice means times 2. And times is also multiplication. All right, moving on to the next page. Let's get my notebook over here a little bit. All right, this one says writing two-step equations. This is answer each question using the information below. So we have Miguel and Carla spent $64 at the bookstore combined. Carla spent $15 less than Michael. So those are your key words right there, less than. So who spent less money at the bookstore? It's going to be Carla. Carla spent $15 less than Miguel. How much less? $15 less. Write an expression to represent the amount of money Miguel spent. So if we take in terms of M, so the money that Miguel spent was going to be $15 more than Carla, since Carla spent $15 less. So to represent the amount of money that Miguel spent in terms of M, so M plus 15, that's the amount of money that Miguel spent. Let's see. Yep. And write an expression to represent the amount of money that Carla spent in terms of M. Okay. So that would just be M. So there's Carla's, and then there's Miguel's. Write an equation to represent the amount of money that Miguel and Carla spent combined. So combined is going to be when you add them together. So we're going to take the amount of money that Miguel spent, which was M plus 15, plus the M amount of money that Carla spent. And an equation has an equal sign in it, and that's equal to $64 total. And actually, we should do a better job of defining M. M is not just money, it's the money that Carla spent. Okay, so this could be kind of confusing if you're not really paying attention to what M stood for. Now, we could make M stand for the amount of money that Miguel spent, and that would kind of change this whole thing around here. So it's kind of interesting. Depends on how your variable, what your variable stands for, how your equation turns out. And it says how much did each person spend at the bookstore. So we would actually need to solve that equation, and for right now we're going to stop because we haven't really talked about solving anything. We're just talking about writing the equation. So we'll come back to number 6 in a later lesson. Okay, next one, it says write a verbal sentence to represent the equation below, then solve. So for right now, we're just going to write a verbal sentence. So one possible sentence would be the quotient of a number and 12 is, the quotient of a number and 12 plus 4 is, that's an equals word, is 16. So there's one possibility. You might say 4 more than the quotient of a number and 12 is equal to 16, or a number divided by 12 plus 4 is equivalent to 16. Again, there's lots of options. So we'll come back to this then solve part again in a later lesson. Okay, and we're going to skip this helping you remember part right there. We're not going to write any word problems today. All right, a little bit more on writing equations. Slide my notebook over. All right, again, we're skipping this part just like we usually do. All right, active vocabulary. We're reviewing some vocabulary. The first section says define equation in your own words. Well, an equation is when you set two expressions equal. You could also say something along the lines of one expression is set equal to another, or two expressions joined by an equal sign. Those would also work. You can notice that an equation, EQU, root part, EQU for equal, root part, an equation must have an equal sign. All right, new vocabulary. Define the term formula in this lesson. So a formula is an equation with more than one variable. So a very famous formula that you might know, for example, would be E equals MC squared, right? That's a formula. You might also know the formula for the area of a circle is pi r squared. So again, we've got more than one variable in each of those examples. Okay? Formula is a word used in everyday English. Find the definition of a formula using a dictionary. Explain how the English definition can help you understand the meaning of formula in mathematics. So let's see, a formula, like maybe would be in everyday English, a formula is a mathematical, I would say, is a mathematical recipe. Okay, so for example, this is the recipe to find the area of a circle. Okay, and so we can think about how in math we use a formula to kind of help us solve different parts in order to find, for example, area here. So we follow the recipe by plugging in the different ingredients. So it's a formula is a mathematical recipe that requires us to plug in certain ingredients. I hope I spelled this right. Spelling is not my forte, but I'm doing the best I can here. To plug in certain ingredients in order to reach a final calculation. So just like in a recipe, right, if you're baking something, you have to put in certain ingredients in order to get out that cake or that pizza, whatever you're making. All right, turning the page. Almost done. This is our last page for today. Okay, we're working on writing some more verbal. This one is an expression, but actually this should say equation here because these are linked with equal signs. All right, so we're using a model to help us translate the sentence below into an equation. 6 more than a number squared is 30 less than 5 times the number. So that's a really important word. That's the equal sign. You can kind of see how they put that in your diagram right there. Is what's linking those two phrases together. So 6 more than. 6 more than means we're going to add 6, and really that more than means this should go over here, that word than. again, we write that backwards. So 6 more than would be plus 6. And a number squared would be x squared. So 6 more than, we put that second, a number squared is equals 5 times a number, that's multiplication, so 5x minus 30. And notice when I'm doing the multiplication, right, 5 times a number, we use proper math grammar, and the coefficient comes first, followed by the variable. All right, next example, translate each equation into a sentence. So there's, again, many sentences we could come up with for this one. We could say something like 2 more than the product of 7 and a number is equal to 30. That would be one example. 7 times a number plus 2 is 30, lots of different ways. All right, number 2, I would say probably p squared. So I should probably write that out. P squared plus 18 is equivalent to k less than a number. And it's okay to name the variables, so I could actually say p instead of a number or k instead of a number, and that would be fine. Okay, so we're going to skip, again, the helping you remember step. This is just kind of a review about how to translate expressions and how to identify the words for equations. All right, thank you. I hope this helps, and have a good evening.